making Gnocchi Alla Sorrentina, and it's a gnocchi-based tomato dish with mozzarella and pecorino. And this dish clocks in at 789 calories per portion, 32 grams of proteins, 72 grams of carbs, and 40 grams of fat. And to start off, we're gonna make our gnocchis. We're gonna be cooking 600 grams of potatoes, and I like to boil my potatoes for making gnocchi. Some people don't and cook them in the oven instead. And we want fairly dry potatoes, so that means that we're gonna be cooking them on a low heat. So just bring that to a boil and then reduce it down so it barely bubbles. As you can see, it's almost boiling, but not really, because that won't damage the surface as much, so that the potatoes won't absorb as much moisture. So to this we're also going to be needing 50 grams of olive oil, and we're going to heat that up, and we are going to add 3 cloves of garlic to this. And this is not the best method. You should crush them before, but I forgot, so that's what I did, and it's a very high risk of burning yourself, so crush your garlics before. And once our potatoes come loose from a cake tester, they're done. We're gonna drain the water and let them sit for a while to steam off. We want to heat our garlic cloves until they're golden brown, so we basically want to fry them and season our oil with our garlic. While doing that, you can flip them a couple of times, and meanwhile we can chop up roughly 8 to 10 leaves of basil. And now they've started to turn golden brown. We're gonna leave them for a little bit longer, but they're almost there. And here's where I like to remove them. So we're just gonna remove the garlic, and then we're gonna add our basil to our oil. And the oil is very hot, so the basil is just simply gonna fry. You can let it cool down a bit if you want, but I feel that it's fine just to add it. But as you can see, it's very hot. And after that, we're going to add 800 grams of crushed tomatoes. You can do this with fresh tomatoes as well, but that's not really in season at the moment. We're going to stir this a bit, and then we're going to let that boil for roughly an hour while we focus on our gnocchi. And to make our gnocchis, we are going to crush our potatoes, and they're still a bit hot, so basically crush them on the counter and let them steam a bit in order to remove some moisture there as well. And while our potatoes are steaming, we are going to chop 2 pieces of mozzarella, and they're 125 grams each. So we're just going to chop that into small dices, and we're going to be adding half of our mozzarella to our tomato mixture, and then we're going to save the other half just to add on top. We're gonna add some salt, we're gonna add some pepper. And now once our potatoes are done steaming, we're gonna hit them with a lot of salt as usual, and 200 grams of flour and 2 egg yolks. So we're gonna mix our dough together, and we don't want to overwork it, but knead it loosely until it's come together and actually forms a dough. And after that, we are actually ready to start making our gnocchis. And some of it will stick to the counter since we're not using a lot of flour, and that's fine. We can just scrape that off and put it back on. Then we're going to preheat our oven at 200 degrees. And then it's time to make our gnocchis. So in order to do that, we are going to sprinkle some flour on our counter and just pat this down a bit. And then I like to use a bench scraper and chop it into rolls. We're going to roll all of these until they're a bit thinner. And also I like to have a wooden cutting board close by as well, because we're going to lay our gnocchis once they're made there, and if we don't flour that cutting board as well, it's a risk that they might stick. So just roll this out, and we can push in the edges a bit if they get too small, so everything is uniform. And once we've done that, all we need to do is take a bench scraper or knife or anything and just chop those up into little pieces. And here, if you feel ambitious, you can use a gnocchi board to actually roll those out and form that traditional gnocchi shape. You can do this with a fork as well, but I think a gnocchi board is easier. And if you want to skip this step, it's totally fine and doesn't really matter if you just boil them as they are. If you do that, you'll save a lot of time. But if you want to roll them into the traditional shape, then gnocchi board or fork. And just, you don't need a lot of force, it's just loosely rolling them and they'll shape themselves very easily. So, once we boil our gnocchis, we're going to be placing them in very cold water, just to stop the cooking process, since we're going to be boiling them and then putting them in the oven. And now our tomatoes are starting to look done as well. They're a lot drier than they were an hour before. And that means that they're basically done, and as you can see, I'm at 1 here, so it's very low heat. So, all we need to do now is prep our shredded cheese, and I'm using Pecorino Romano for this, and we're gonna need 100 grams of Pecorino. However, here I had some trouble with my camera, so you need to trust me that I'm using 100 grams, since everything sort of fell. We're gonna salt our water, and then we're gonna add our gnocchis. And once the water is boiling and you add your gnocchis, just give that a stir, and then once the gnocchis are floating, they're done. So use something to scoop them out. And they're gonna be floating to the top, and then just scoop them out, put them in our cold water. And that means that we're almost ready to put this in the oven. And as long as you don't have a very high heat, they won't stick to the bottom, and they will just, if they do, just give it a stir. And then all of them will float up eventually. After that, we're just gonna drain this. Make them fairly dry, and then I like to put everything in a frying pan and mix it together. You can also do it in your pan that you're gonna cook this in the oven in eventually. So we're gonna go for half our tomato sauce and mix that in, or a little bit more than half, and just mix that in. And the pan I'm eventually cooking this is 25 times 18 centimeters, or 9.5 and 7 inches if you're one of those. To that we're gonna add half our mozzarella and roughly half of our pecorino as well. And we're gonna stir all of that together. And if you feel that it's a little bit too dry, we can always add a bit more tomato sauce. We're saving some of the sauce in order to create a tomato layer on top that we're gonna mix with mozzarella and pecorino. And I like to take 4 or 5 basil leaves here as well and mix those in. And then all we need to do is put that in our cooking tray. And we're gonna just even that out a bit. And then we're gonna top this with the tomato sauce that we have left, and also with our mozzarella and our pecorino. So just sprinkle your mozzarella that you have left as evenly as possible. And then we're just gonna finish this off with the Pecorino Romano that we have left. And this is gonna be a lovely vegetarian cheesy dish. Classic Italian cooking. So, now we're just gonna place that in the oven, and we're gonna place it in the top of our oven, and we're gonna put on our grill function, and we're gonna leave it in there for roughly 15 minutes. And as you can see, I'm one of those Europeans who eat lunch at 11. And here we go, that's it. 15 minutes later we have a crunchy cheese layer on top and stringy lovely melted cheese in the middle. And this makes 4 servings. You can make them smaller if you like. I usually go for 4, and I think this is a lovely vegetarian gnocchi dish. And making gnocchi is always fun, and I hope you try it, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.